All right. Welcome, everyone. We have a little bit of a different presentation today with our National REIA. We are in Milwaukee at mid-year for National REIA. So many of our folks are already here and we're getting ready for a presentation I've got to go to in just a little bit. So we are going to go through a little bit of a legislative introduction, and then we're going to go to a pre-recorded session that we want to share with you because we're very excited about this. We have Homeworthi is a partnership we're working with, and this program looks very exciting for the data that we're going to be able to share, and that will open up even later this year as this becomes something available for members across the board. So we look forward to sharing this with you. Stay tuned in, pay attention to this. This is going to be exciting. So without much ado, let me get to a couple of things. One, thank you to Home Depot Pro. Home Depot, as you well know, has been a great sponsor, great partner, and great friend of ours. And we want to just say thank you and recognize that right off the bat. So with that, I also want to move on to disclaimers. We are not giving legal advice. We're not giving financial advice. I may play a lawyer on television periodically, but I am not one, and we're not giving legal advice either way. So just trying to give a little insight and help here. And even as we kind of move into the agenda for the legislative side, I'm going to take over here screen for a moment and share screen. I'm going to show you a little bit of a, where'd it go? Things moved and it went away. There we go. So bear with me here. I'm going to show you a little bit of what we're going to be showing today. And the idea behind some of this, I want you guys to understand some of what we're looking at. I was asked to share some good news legislatively, and I was like, seriously, where are we at? And it's been interesting because a lot of the questions have been more fiscally and financially related. In some sense, what is the government going to do to me financially, rather than even regulatory or legislatively? So there are a variety of things going on, and the presentation that I give here with a longer version of this at mid-year will be recorded. We'll share that out as well. But I want to focus on a couple of things. I'll give you that as a little thing to consider. That's one of our national papers put that out. I thought it was an interesting thing just to prepare for. I'm going to move through these. I want to touch on this here. This is something I want to make sure everybody is aware of. There are a number of myths out there, and those myths end up being, advocates push them, politicians believe them, regulators believe them, and if we don't address them, they generate a whole series of problems for us. So I have a series of problems listed there, from the housing affordability issue, which in some cases is legitimate, and in some cases is way overblown. The idea that families are spending over 50% of their monthly budget on a housing or rent. The fact is we wouldn't approve somebody on that rate. Typically it's about a 30% rate. So we want to make sure that we're addressing that with legislators, that they understand that from a business perspective, part of screening is, you're not taking somebody in who's already spending 50% or more of their budget on housing. That's not what we do. Of course, this one here, we are in Milwaukee. So of all places, talking about evictions equaling profits, and that being a myth, promoted by Matthew Doward in his book Evicted, that was actually generated here out of Milwaukee of all places. So there's some things like that we want to make sure we're addressing that, and how it is really kind of the soul killing part of the job. It's not anything everybody wants to do. We take every effort we can to minimize the risks of going to eviction, to avoid it. It is not a profitable thing. It is one of the worst parts of the job. Another side is investors are buying up all housing. You might remember there was a Senate hearing back in February on this, and coming up on the 28th of June here, there's going to be a House hearing on investors and quote unquote buying up all housing. And the problem that we have is this, words have meaning. So when you say investors, it's like, what do you mean? What they really mean are institutional investors, whether it's a Vinebrook or a BlackRock or some of these other large groups that are buying up large chunks because they have all this money out there. Those are kind of key concerns. So this is an area I really want to focus on, is when you're talking to legislators, you're talking with folks, make sure you're bringing up, that's not who the investor really is. There's a difference between a corporate and institutional investor and who we are as local investors. Finally is this, landlords. This is one that comes in the sense of whether it's, somebody coming back and say, reentry housing, somebody coming out of a jail, a background of some sort, and saying, hey, I need to get a job, I need to get a house. And sometimes they want the house before they get the job, which of course we all know that they're not going to qualify right off the bat. And there's this myth that landlords are screening out good people. And the fact is we have standards across the board that treat everyone fairly and equally. That's what we've been working on for years and complying with that. So we're not screening out good people, but there are good people who may be in a bad situation and they're going to get screened out. And that's part of what happens. So, actions do have consequences and we have to minimize risk from a business perspective. So we're addressing those. But this is something from these myths. I want you to remember, these are things that we want to make sure that we're addressing, because as we do, it takes away some of the effort and some of the push by legislators and regulators on these other issues. So having said that, whole lot going on in the next 4.5 months. There are all kinds of theories. I'm not going to go into the election side of it that much, but midterms are typically swing from one party, whoever's in the White House, to the opposite party. A lot of those issues end up being based on how much money is in the person's pocket. Crime, tax, and schools are usually the top issues. But when it comes to jobs, is there a cost? Is there a value to it? What's really going on? And people will often vote, is it throw the bums out, whoever they are, based on how their pocketbook is. And that pocketbook vote is more important even than crime, taxes, and schools to some degree. And if those three line up with the economic factors, it could be very, very strong swing one way or another. So I'll put that out there and just mention that. Federally, there is a logjam. That is not necessarily a bad thing. Let me just remind you that sometimes status quo is a good thing. It's not going backwards. So I just mentioned that to you. Here's a couple of bills that we're working on, we're watching. Privacy is an issue. Maria Cantwell is kind of holding this bill up. There's a discussion of whether the California and European Union versions of privacy are going to be the floor or the ceiling as far as standards go. We're going to be putting some information. We're weighing in on that through our Housing Coalition partners. One of the things I do want to mention, though, is especially on the regulatory factor, when things are jammed up legislatively, if the administration can't move things through in a legislative fashion, they're going to go back to the regulatory side, and they can move things in a regulatory fashion. One of the things we're watching for right now is CFPB. We'll actually be talking with Rent Perfect here in a little bit at mid-year regarding this specific issue, because we've always been told, right? Make sure you treat everyone equally, fairly, and consistently. Well, algorithms are out there looking at things like credit scores, and there seems to be a difference in credit scores, at least based according to CFPB, based on racial issues. And they're saying now while it may be facially neutral, there is still a disparate impact. And the idea being that African-American and Hispanic citizens typically have a 650 credit score, and the Caucasian credit score is typically 725. So therefore, the algorithm ends up having a disparate impact on minority classes. And so there's some discussion about how to fix that, how to address that. Some effort to say, hey, just throw it all out. We don't need credit scores at all. And it's like, well, hold on. There is a legitimate aspect to this. So that's going to be an ongoing discussion we're having, and just want to give you a heads up on that as well. And look for more information coming from like our partners at Rent Perfect and others. So move through this. Here we got, this is one of the things we've talked about, Build Back Better. This is the House administration's focus. There's two sides to it. Again, there's a legislative request, and this is something that, again, with the logjam in mind, it's probably not going to go anywhere. And you'll notice my request there, I've got a couple of dollar signs on that because it's all about asking for money. Now, the other side to it is the regulatory changes. And there's one in there that's actually very interesting. One is based on density and increasing density for like ADUs, adding additional residential units on a property. Okay, there's some incentives for municipalities to do that. But the White House has instructed HUD to instruct FHA, to instruct Fannie, Freddie, and Ginnie to consider or to figure out how to cover chattel loans, which are loans for trailer parks or modular homes. I jokingly put the picture up there of, a trailer, but the reality is if you have a trailer park, if you have a group of modular homes, that people have to go in and get a personal loan. It's usually at a much higher rate. And the feds coming in and supporting it, saying, hey, we know it's not real estate and it's not a typical mortgage, but we are going to support these chattel loans, these personal loans. That could be very beneficial. And that could help, especially for entry-level housing. For those of us who do have these types of properties, we'll be providing more information. Again, literally the incentive or the instruction came through last month. So this is going to be something that they're going to take a little while on. And the real caveat or concern that we have is because of Dodd-Frank, most banks don't want to do a loan less than 80,000 and definitely don't want to do one less than 100,000 or less likely to do one for 100,000. Well, most of these chattel loans are typically in that $20,000, $30,000, $50,000 range. And that could be very limiting or restricting on how these loans are actually supported by FHA. So that's one of the things to consider. Final piece I want to get to is this one. States. I mentioned to you before, sometimes it's, status quo, sometimes a good day. Rent control is a hot topic. Now, just for perspective, I want everybody to understand there's 32 states that have rent control preemption already in place. So 32 states out there, that's a good thing. Rent control is not there. There are 8 states that have rent control in place. And then there are a number of areas where municipalities are looking at trying some of those efforts and putting rent control, but there are still 10 states in play, whether they're going to go rent control, if they're going to leave it open, what's going to happen there. Additionally, source of income. This is another issue where you can be literally forced to have the government as your partner in-house because you're not allowed to limit the Section 8 or a variety of other sources. You're not allowed to exclude those. You'd have to accept them. Now, the difficulty with that, and we're going to have another little bit of a analysis and story on this, probably in about the next month or so. I'm meeting with another gentleman next week to put together an article on folks who are dealing with the source of income, because let's face it, not just 9 states, but 120 municipalities have source of income in place or protections for it. How do you have to deal with that? Are there ways around it? Are there legitimate ways around it? And additionally, are there ways to work with it? So bearing that in mind, we're going to follow up with another issue on that. The final piece down there I want to mention to you is this, put it down there like a radio station, WKBTY. And this is when we get local governments, somewhat states, but especially at the local government level, where it's we know better than you. Now, they may not have a clue how your business runs, but the whole we know better than you crowd is focused on security deposits, the background checks. We're seeing a lot of different variations on these type of laws. And so as you move through and figure out where you're going to invest at, and you're talking to legislators or township trustees, council members, aldermen, make sure you're being a resource for them, talking to them about what you're doing on the investing side, because most of them actually do want to know from somebody who's actually doing it, their perspective. Believe it or not, sometimes there are a few, yes, we all know that do not want to know. We get that. But most of them do want to know. And that will help offset that whole we know better than you mentality by getting plugged in and being a real estate investor who's actually communicating and being a resource in your state, in your municipality. So those are kind of the hot topics I want to mention to you. There's a few other issues out there. One I will mention just in passing is there's actually discussion about a federal bill of rights for renters. And of course, there's, forget your bill of rights, forget the original bill of rights, just there's going to be a bill of rights for renters. And that's the world we live in right now. So that's what we're dealing with. That is a discussion item that's up for discussion at the federal level. There's some scuttlebutt on that. Additionally, there's some lawsuits behind the scenes Massachusetts has one. And again, back to those algorithm side of things and how screening is done. I really encourage you, make sure you're using a professional screening service provider to keep you protected. There are testers out there, and they are checking whether it's the source of income stuff, the preemption, and also security deposits. These testers have been well funded to make sure they're going out and checking. So make sure you're fair housing compliant no matter what you do. So I'll kind of stop there for a moment, see if there's any questions for us here. Come back to my screen. Bear with me here. All right. So not seeing any questions, which is good. Appreciate that. If you have questions, Charles at National REIA, send me questions. Happy to help. And again, we'll have some more information coming out on a couple of things, from source of income to, thank you, Lori, and then also to information on several of these issues, as well as an extended legislative presentation on these issues. Right now, though, I am very excited to share with you something we've been working on, something that's kind of been a hope and a dream for quite a while, which is being able to provide solid data for everyone, and doing this on a national level, but being able to get to a granular level of helping on a neighborhood by neighborhood basis. We were working with Homeworthi. They're going to introduce themselves here in a minute. This is a pre-recorded session, so you're not going to be able to ask questions on it, and it's probably going to stir up questions and excitement, but please understand there is more coming. It's about a 20-minute video here. Please pay attention to this, look at us. We're going to be looking for feedback on this as we roll it out more over the next probably about month to 45 to 90 days. I'll say 30 to 60 days. How's that? So it is more to come on this, but look forward to sharing this with you. And if you have questions on it, and it's a burning question you can't wait on, send it to info@nationalrea.org, and we will try to get back with you on this. But that's the main thing. And with that, I want to turn this over to Homeworthi, and you guys are going to be very excited about this.
Thanks to all of you in person for being here, and thanks to those who are watching remotely for REIA Now on Friday. I'm Jeremy Goldstein, partner and colleague. Alan Steinbeck. We are from Homeworthi, which is a housing market analysis and forecasting service. But we are here today specifically to talk about this partnership, this burgeoning partnership between National REIA and Homeworthi, and the effort of developing a National REIA Resource Center. So I just want to start with the vision, like what it is that we're hoping to accomplish. So say you're an investor interested in finding new opportunities in neighborhoods or counties or regions you're not so familiar with. Where can you go? The Resource Center. Perhaps you need to know something about legislative changes or regulatory changes, things that impact your day-to-day life. Where can you go to get that information? The Resource Center. Maybe you've already got a vision of something that you want to do, and you need help in selling that to other people. You need the right information, you need the right infographics, you need to find a way to convey your message to others the best way possible. Where can you go to get that support? National REIA Data Center, Resource Center. That's really what it is that we are attempting to do, is to become an industry leader in providing data, forecasting, analysis, interactive tools and reports, legislative and regulatory data. We just want to, as best we can, create, as all-encompassing we can, a resource to help make better decisions and create better outcomes. That's the goal, that's the vision that Rebecca and we share. So we're going to talk a little bit more about why we should be doing these things, what are things that Homeworthi can do to help, but in the end, this is going to be a true partnership in that there are things that we do as data providers that we think could be really helpful. We've done a lot of the work already in forecasting, housing market analysis, interactive mapping, custom reporting, and the like. But the thing that's really going to make this thing hum is combining our outside data perspective with your day-to-day understanding of what makes your job successful, what it is that you need to know to be successful, what are the day-to-day pitfalls, hurdles, opportunities about places that we can bring into this resource center, and then give people a full picture of what it takes to be successful in that space. We'll drill down a little bit more into some of the reasons why we see this as important, particularly now and moving forward. We're going to talk more and show you more of what Homeworthi can do so you can get some ideas of how it is that we can supplement the stuff that you're already doing, how we can be a value add to the work that you already do. And we'll already start getting some feedback, because this is really going to be like a participatory process. We are not coming here with all the answers. The idea is that we're going to work together to build this thing communally. So those are the main things that we want to do. For the next step of this process, I'm going to turn it over to Alan Steinbeck to tell you more.
So we're all talking about this changing market that we're seeing unfold here. And I would put it this way: the cost of money is getting more expensive as we sit here today, and the cost of real estate is getting more expensive. And so it's becoming a lot more challenging to find investments and to operate. And maybe the models that you all have been using for the past 10 years are starting to get a little stressed out as you start to build your portfolios and expand them. So I think the data decision making and the information that we have in this is a good step in the right direction. We want to make you all more productive investors. As you use this tool, it's really about finding the right neighborhoods to invest in, and then looking for those properties where those neighborhoods support real value for money and value creation potential. And then there's opportunities to be a leader. We want this organization to be a national leader, a recognized leader in presenting information about the real estate market, having data-backed and research-backed tools that get turned into articles in the media, and also information that goes into the policy formation and the policy advocacy part of the organization. So this resource center is member focused, but has other benefits to the organization as well. So a couple things about the market in general. The investor share of the housing market is increasing. Over the past 20 years, there's been the percentage of sales where investors were involved has tripled. And so we have a lot more people in the business of doing real estate investing. And now we have a lot more institutional money at play in the investment market, which is causing some very high competition in this space. Some work that we did was look at the unaffordable counties, and you can see the years across the side. In 2022, the number of counties where housing prices have far outstripped household income and their ability to afford these houses has gone up 2.5x. So these are the big counties and the big markets, the places where you all like to invest. And what we're seeing is that it's hyper-focused on these bigger markets where you're sort of getting out of whack in terms of housing prices and affordability. This graphic, we're seeing that housing supply changes, maybe housing that are changing. If you look at the light blue bars in this graph, you see in the 1990s, this is the change in population in the United States. The change has been, we've still been growing, but the amount of change has been declining over the past 3 decades. And the dark blue bars at the bottom is the amount of new housing delivery to support this population. And you see a pretty consistent amount until you get to the 2010s in the wake of the great financial crisis, which greatly affected real estate markets and housing everywhere, where not as much housing was delivered, which I think is one of the reasons why we're suffering through some of this situation we have now. But also, if the 2020s look like the past couple of years, you can see it's never been better in terms of the delivery of housing relative to the amount of population that's coming. And that's good for stabilizing prices and making a more predictable market. And then price discovery dynamics are changing. We're seeing that in places that are growing, which are represented by the green bars, over the past 10 years, we saw price appreciation start in early 2011, so that first period that it grows. Now it's going very fast, as everyone knows, from 2019 to today, where we have 45% increase in housing prices. But in red, it shows the large markets where population is decreasing. And even in places where population is decreasing, where you would think you wouldn't have this price appreciation going on, it's still going on. There's almost the same. Those markets have 40%. So we see this as, I want to use the word irrational in some places. It's certainly gotten very hot in certain markets. And what we want the data portal to do is enable you all to find those places where there's still rationality in the marketplace, where there's still value for money, where you can still operate and recognize rent increase and also value increase in the properties that you purchase. So we know that you all built your businesses on hard work, on persistence, and willingness to take risks. We know that you all have models that you use to succeed. And one of the problems is that hard work isn't really scalable. You have 24 hours in the day. Many people have a real job, a full-time job, and a side job in investing. So we know you're working very hard to do this. But the working smart part is the scalable part that we're hoping this data can help you all use to make your decisions more efficient. So we want to provide informed decision making. We think that will lead to resilience and success even in these difficult times. And this information we have, we think will give everybody an edge in those good and bad times. So that's sort of an overview of where we stand in the context.
At this stage, I want to talk a little bit more about our service, about Homeworthi, some of the stuff that we do already, some of the things that you can have access to, but mostly about trying to get everybody up to speed about the wide array of different ways in which we can interact with good data to help make good decisions. So this is not so much about look at all the cool things we do, it's more like look at all the cool things that are out there that National REIA's Resource Center could start utilizing, leveraging, building upon. We're going to end up talking about all these things in a little bit of detail later, but the idea here is that we already have lots of different ways to play with this information and get it easily. There's interactive maps. You click on a place and you get all the information that you need. You can do it at a county scale or a neighborhood scale. Querying, so you want to find out, in particular, you're trying to find places that meet your own specific criteria. We can do that. Different map series, sometimes pictures tell 1,000 words, pictures worth 1,000 words. We want to get something out quickly and clearly that affects the entire country. Use the map series. Can also do custom reporting. So you need help in explaining what it is that you're thinking about a place, and you want to get all of that into one hard copy location. We've got that stuff too. And we'll go through all of those in a little bit. But before we do that, I do want to make sure, I want to be sort of transparent about some of the work that we do, some of the underpinnings of what we do. There are things about what we do that are fairly unique, and so I think it's important to make sure that everybody's on the same page. So I am going to take a few minutes and get a little data wonky. It's okay if you tune out for a little while. I'll make a signal or something when it gets to be more fun again, okay? But at first, I just want to make sure. Yeah. But first, I want to talk a little bit about some of the elements of what it is that Homeworthi has. So we deal with data and analytics, we deal with forecasts, and we deal with work products. So we assemble and develop data. We have developed a forecasting system for rent and home price appreciation. And then we have different mechanisms of distributing that information to customers, clients, National REIA. So let's dig into all of those a little bit. First, this is going to be about some of the data and analytics stuff. So there are two big sort of topics that really force and change housing price. They determine housing price and they force housing price over time. They're drivers of housing price change. And one is supply and demand. It's the one I think almost everybody knows about. It's the one that I think was one of the easiest to get at. It's like how many people are moving into a place, how many new buildings are being built, what kind of employment is there. That's all, that's supply and demand dynamics. And those are very important, particularly in the near term. But there's this other piece I think that usually goes sort of underrepresented when it comes to really understanding a place from a real estate investor's perspective. And that's really this part, costs and benefits. Some of the cost pieces I think might be, fairly straightforward. It's easy enough to find out how much you're going to have to pay with interest on a property. It's easy enough to find out real estate taxes and other fees that are associated with that purchase. It is generally easy enough to get at larger issues of money supply, how many people are investing in a place, and how easy it is for you to get a loan. But then there's this other piece, the business environment. And that really comes down again to that's legislation and regulation. What are the things that make it either easy to be a housing provider in a place or difficult to be a housing provider in a place? Are the regulations in place that facilitate your job being successful, or do they inhibit your job being successful. And having all of that stuff is part of the real cost, either in monetary or time terms, or just frustration terms, of like the costs of housing and housing investment. On the flip side is the benefits. And this is really the part that kind of interests me most, is what is it about places that makes them worth being in? Why do you want to be there? Why do your customers want to be there? Why do your renters want to be there? And it's this mix of benefits about the economy, about employment opportunities, about amenities, and about daily activities and needs. Right? This is the location, location, location. Right? That's the critical piece. But the data on that and how to really use that in a way to help make investment decisions is one of the weaker attributes out there. And that's something that I think that we can help make understandable to folks. I'm going to get into the weeds a little bit more on that in a moment, but I did want to just show you. So we have a ton of county and regional data, a ton of neighborhood data. I'm absolutely not going to read any of this. We will just go through it very quickly. I just want you to know there's lots of different stuff that we bring to bear. Some of it is just the acquisition of data that's publicly available, just putting it into one place. But a lot of it is data development. It's using that information to then make to help real understanding of places, and get at valuation, and get at forecasting, and get at potential of a place. You go ahead, Alan. And one of the most important is this locational benefits piece. So this little graphic is like, what is it that makes up housing value, right? It's the building, how big it is, brick and mortar, and then all the stuff it sits on. Are there good jobs around? Are there a lot of them? Is there stuff to do for you, for your family, for your renters, for seniors, for children? What are the amenities? Are schools good? Is the weather good? Is there stuff to do outside? Right? All these things go into how you value a place. They're all the reasons why you live where you live across the country, and why people move to those places. Right? It's not a coincidence that people are moving to the kinds of places that they're going to now, where there is high quality of life and high quality jobs and really good schools and good hospitals and such. The thing is, all that stuff can be monetized, be translated into real dollar value. And that's what we've done. So it means wherever you are in the country, any neighborhood, any county, your particular bundle of benefits is quantified. And that is an important driver of change moving forward. As much as supply and demand stuff can make big differences quickly, in the long run, which is one of the things that we are focused on from an investment perspective, one of the biggest drivers is how much benefit are you getting from a place, and how much you're paying for that, and what the difference is between them. Places where you've got more monetized benefits than the cost you're paying, those are great investment locations. Places where it costs more to be there than the benefits that you're getting from the place, those places are worse investment over time. And we can prove it, and I'll show you that shortly. One of our, my pride and joy is the Homeworthi forecasts. It was the original reason that we started doing this in the first place. It was how can we help people find the right places to invest if we use housing price appreciation or rent appreciation as like a metric for success. How good is this place to invest in? Our forecasts are all across the country at multiple scales: neighborhood, county, region. And I'll show you examples of how then we use the interactive mapping to get you that information. They're multi-timeline as well. And the real focus is, say, the next couple of years through the next 10 or so years. The work we do is not really about how much you can make by buying a property, fixing it up, and sending it out. There are a lot of great vendors out there that can help you with that particular topic, and they're better than me. So I'm done talking about it with you today. The thing that we can do, though, is say, how much is locational value likely to drive change? And that changes, it changes in the near term, it changes in the medium term, and it changes in the long term, and they change differently. And so we have forecasts for each of those time periods. Effectively, whatever time period is you're thinking about holding onto a property, we have a forecast of its price appreciation growth. The next, they're comparative. So our role is not to say that in the next 3 years, your neighborhood is going to appreciate 21.2%. Anybody who tells you that, that's just straight up, that's a real guess. And there are too many factors, particularly in the near term, that can affect price change. And we just looked at that chart before that showed for a long period of time, we were growing 4 or 5% a year. Now last 2 years, it's been 20% a year. I defy you to find somebody who knew it was going to go up 20% a year. It's just too difficult. But what we can do is we can compare locations against one another. Is location A a better investment, or is location B a better investment? And we use this scale, this 0 to 100 scale. The higher the score, the more likely it is to exceed the national average, the more likely it is to be a strong investment. So here, you've got a location A with a 40, location B with a 90, so the better investment would be location B. Yeah? Make sense? So that's what we're going to be doing, a lot of this sort of, these numeric drivers of 0 to 100. The higher the number, the better it is. And then the last thing I want you to know about forecasts is this has a history of reliability. We've got models for many years where we just say, from the past, saying, well, let's see how you did. We'll score all the neighborhoods, we'll score all the counties, and we'll watch what happened over time. So we know how these things can have done. And these charts here show the real performance of this system, this model, over time. So the higher the number, the better the performance. Near term, medium term, long term. Higher the number, higher the performance return. Lower the number, lower the performance return. Now, it doesn't mean that every single 20 was beat by every single 100. Transparent. I want to be transparent. It's still the future. But time and time again, the more often you're investing in hundreds, the more often you're succeeding. The more often you're investing in 20s, the harder it is to keep up. Doesn't mean you can't do it, but it means it's harder. All right. Whew. That's it. Okay, anybody who fell asleep during the boring data part, wake up. Now there's going to be more fun stuff. Let me do that. So here are some of the ways that we have already developed to get this kind of information out. So one of them is through an interactive mapping system that we already use on Homeworthi right now. And I want to show you here, so we'll zoom in on the interactive county map version. So this is what you could see. So you could imagine going to the resource center and I want to do the infographic, I want to do the map portal. Okay, here it is. Well, okay, so now here I am. What am I going to do with this? Well, I'm really interested in learning about some new place, or just learning about my own for the first time. I'm going to show you just a little video, of somebody doing this for the first time. So this person is really interested in Los Angeles because, Los Angeles is cool. So click on Los Angeles, and you get all this information. And it starts with big picture elevator pitch summary. What is this place, and is it a good place to invest? And then starts getting more and more detailed, providing the numeric backing for those forecasts with real numbers, and then the details behind those numbers. Why did it get a population growth score of 8? Well, it's because it's been struggling and it has a longer-term trend of doing that. And so we have all these various categories that go into it: population and employment, business environment, and the business environment piece, again, I think is one where the collaboration with National REIA would make that so much stronger. I'm very excited about that prospect. But it's got demographic information, it's got community characteristics, it's got peers, so that you can understand what a place is, how it got to be that kind of way, and where it's likely to be going in the future. Same thing at the neighborhood scale. So in this map now, you just zoom in a little closer, now you're starting to see neighborhoods. So this person's really interested in Echo Park in LA. They must be doing pretty well, good for them. But the map here is showing you, so now we're really interested in what is it about this neighborhood? What kind of place is this? Particularly for people who, if this is not a place with which you are fully familiar, we want to get you up to speed as quickly as we can so that you really know what kind of place this is that you're investing in, along with what a good investment it may be. So the same idea, a lot of that same information, population, employment, demographics, but in particular things like, do the demographics of this neighborhood match the demographics of the people who are moving to that neighborhood? Is this a place that is likely to be in high demand in the near future, or is this a place that doesn't match the kind of demand that you're seeing from new populations? And so additional demographic information, additional detail on the forecasts, and even peer communities that you could say, or peer neighborhoods. So maybe this isn't the right fit for you. Where are some others that might be other matches? The platform we're using to host this data has this query tool. It's a little clunky, but what it does allow you to do is to pick any number of criteria that are interesting to you and say, find me places that meet that criteria. This is maybe one of the boringest possible criteria, but it's like, I want to look in Alabama, and I want to find places that have a long-term score that's above average, and I want to find places that have at least 50,000 people, and I want the average home price to be $150,000. Go. There they are in red. Those are all the places. Probably need a better set of criteria than that, but like these are the places that you would start looking. Okay, to start your search. Pro tip: Northern Alabama. Yeah.
It's very hot.
Yeah.
Shut up, will you?
Yeah, man. You're stealing all that. No. All right. So we can also just do sort of map series. I think this is one of the places too where it's really easy to know a lot about your individual community, but sometimes it's hard to have like the context of it. You know, so this map is real estate tax rates across the country. I think it really helps to show not only what your number is, but how it relates to everybody else. And we can be doing this with any number of data elements. So this is just current median rents. You know, and you could look at rent change. You could look at remember those list of tables, those two boring slides are just a bunch of tables. It's like all that stuff can be used to start creating the kinds of maps that help tell the story that you need to tell, either to understand a place for yourself, to convey that to others on your team, to get projects done. And you know, one of the most interesting things to me about this one in particular is that Florida, for a long time, New York was like the gold standard for rents. There was no place in America more expensive than New York. End of story. And over the last 5 years, Florida's getting real close. They're getting real close. You know, and there's going to be a question, a legitimate question of how much are the benefits of Florida now being matched by the cost versus the benefits of New York and their costs. Agnostic to that, that's not like I'm not tipping my hand that I think one way or the other. There are tremendous benefits to each of those places. I think it's just that you're starting to see them even out because they have obviously very different sets of amenities, but they can both be valued, and so now it's easier to make this sort of apples to apples comparison. Benefits versus costs, whatever your set of benefits are, it all comes out to a number, a value that you compare to the costs. Last one of these, making custom reports. We have a template that we use. It's easy enough to modify it. Whatever really suits the needs of National REIA, we are interested in making that creation for you. So this one's like, you know, pretty numbers heavy, using little, you know, cutesy infographics to tell the story of Dallas as a place that's a pretty good investment. Not a terrible shock, but it also includes all the various pieces as to why it thinks that. And again, helps to contextualize the place, compare it against other places. Why is it that Dallas seems like a reasonably good place to invest in moving forward? And you could do this at the neighborhood scale, regional scale. It could be 4 pages long, it could be 1 page. As long as we have the information already, it's easy enough to turn this into something that you can produce, print out, send around, help tell your story. All right, so that was a bunch of elements. There's some additional ones that we could also, I think, bring to bear. Research and publications, it says, on state and local regulations, quarterly reports. You know, we custom research. Alan and I have been consultants for a long time. It's our primary interest in helping clients solve their individual problems We are much less inclined to say, we've already got a solution and you need to buy it. It is much more like, we want to help build the solution that fits you. And so that's what this is about. It's finding all those elements that work best for this group. I could vamp for like 4 more minutes and then, or any other questions? Oh. All right, well, thank you very much for the time today. I really appreciate it. It's wonderful getting to you today.